getting at, Devin?
The film is done right. So there should be a sign-up sheet there in Swanton for anyone who would like to make a comment there.
Devin, you should have that text for me.
Text of that list right now, and then anyone online who wishes to rest of the board, please raise your hand and we'll add you to your list. And alright, so we will got a good lengthy list here, so we will have a 3-minute time limit on public comments for tonight. So the first person on the list, Chair, we recognize Steve Martin.
You want to test that?
Yeah, is that going to hear me or
Yeah,
pick this up?
This is for the online meeting, and
That's
that's,
a little quiet.
This one here?
yeah, this is for the online, so it's more.
Okay.
Is that okay, Devin? Can you hear him?
Can you hear me okay?
No, it's a little quiet.
You get it up higher?
I'm not sure what I got for adjustments on that. There's a volume on there, but I don't think it's gonna adjust the mic.
That's a static. That should be the only thing.
It's not, powered up. No lights on that, right, Steve?
No, it's not lighting up.
Let's try a different connector. Lights?
Yes, got lights now.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
it's a lot better.
Okay.
The
How-
video did turn off there, so we'll wait just a second. We're gonna get that back on.
How long do we have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay.
3 minutes.
According to,
All right,
okay, all set?
all set.
Okay. According to published data by the CDC, 99.9815% of children who contact COVID-19 survive. Children are not a significant threat to the elderly and vulnerable, as most COVID cases are spread from adults to children. This is not an FDA-approved vaccine they are looking to give children. In other words, any mandate for children is of an experimental drug. Let that sink in. Experimental. Healthy adolescents aged 12 to 17 who have been given COVID vaccines have experienced blood clots, myocarditis, neurological symptoms, and extreme fatigue. Here are some incredibly alarming statements from member doctors of the very FDA panel that have recommended emergency use authorization of the COVID-19 Pfizer vaccine for children as young as age 5. We are never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is unless we start giving it, and that's just the way it goes. I am just worried that if we say yes, then the states are going to mandate administration of this vaccine for children to go to school, and I do not agree with that. It just seems to me that in some ways we're vaccinating children to protect the adults when it should be the other way around. If 30 million children already have some form of immunity, they've made their contribution to herd immunity already. When asked about the vaccine risk benefit for children, one panelist recognized that myocarditis cases may exceed the benefit of the vaccine in 12 to 15-year-olds. We support the idea of individual liberty, which aligns with our state and federal constitutions, which protect the idea that all people are created equal and are afforded equal rights, which government is instituted to protect. We defend the right of businesses to operate how they choose, but never to the extent that they infringe on the inherent rights of the people to make personal and private medical decisions without facing coercion, exclusion, or discrimination. We believe that every person ought to have the right to access public accommodations without the prospect of medical coercion, and that violations of privacy leading to medical apartheid are real concerns that need to be lawfully addressed. We believe that every person has the natural, essential, and inherent right to bodily integrity, free from any threat or compulsion that the person accepts any medical intervention, including experimental COVID shots. We reject the idea of communism, which values the greater good over the rights of the individual and in effect requires the rights of some to be violated to elevate the privileges of others. We urge this board and other elected representatives to protect the rights of the people, their constituents, and all citizens have a right to medical freedom. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah.
Next person on the list I have is Chelsea Lamoille.
Oh, he's doing it, I think, from
Yeah.
the attendance.
No, you're calling from the attendance, Devin, not the speakers.
Next speaker should be Kim DeLorme. You get that, Devin? The bottom part of that text I sent you.
Is Chelsea there?
She's here, but not.
The next person you have on the speaker list is Kim DeLorme. I think you're looking at the attendance part of the text. It should be further down.
It's like for you to be at the central office.
I sent you another text. Try that one if you. Devin, do you see the bottom part of that list says speaker? And on there should say Kim DeLorme.
Where am I looking?
The bottom part of that text message.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, so attendance on top and speakers at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I did that wrong. All right, there you go. Rookie mistake. Sorry about that. Kim, I see you're up and ready to go. Kim DeLorme.
Am I good? Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything like written. I just have a couple of questions, and I know you guys don't like to answer like back, so maybe we could get emails out to the community after. I am concerned, and I've already reached out to my principal about the vaccine clinics being in the school. Not so much about kids getting pulled and randomly getting shots, but more about how traumatic it could be. How many parents are really going to show up when they can't miss any more work because of all the close contact and staying home from that for weeks on end. So these kids are going to be, you're going to have 5-year-olds in preschool, some of them, getting vaccines without their parents. I mean, that is traumatizing. I have a 6-year-old, and she told me I wouldn't get a shot at school because it would be too scary. I'm like, yeah, because that is scary. And then you're going to kind of like put those together. I'm assuming at this point it's too late to try to change anything. I don't have a problem with it being at the school. I think it should have been reconsidered by the Department of Health to do it after school hours or on the weekends. That way parents could come with their children instead of sending them and having the school deal with them, the staff, the nurse, the principal. I don't know, I just think that should have been brought up, maybe. And I don't even think it's on our level. I think it's from like the Department of Health and down is kind of just setting the rules, which I don't love. Also, if we hit the 80% of kids getting vaccinated by January, like the governor had said by January 18th, 15th, whatever, masks can come off. I just was wondering if anyone has thought about the repercussions of the mask coming off now, because there's colds and the flu and this flying around now, and kids are masked up. What's gonna happen when you do take it off? There's gonna be tons of sickness because usually this all comes in September and October when school first starts. So we would have already been past all this kind of, and now come January after the holidays, it's just going to go crazy now. I feel like we're gonna have to shut down the school. Like Sheldon's in the kind of the situation of they have a ton of teachers and students out. That's, I feel like, is gonna be us. So maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had about the unmasking, and believe me, I'm all for the unmasking. But now it's to the point where what's gonna happen with all these kids? They're gonna be out of school even more. Parents are gonna be out of work even more because I don't know if there's a plan in place, and we don't know. and it's to come down, or if that's something maybe to like put on the books of things to talk about.
Thank you, Kim. I think you brought up some things for us to that we can respond to, so we'll be happy to follow up on that. Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Tammy Underwood.
I always have too much prepared to read because we only get 3 minutes, so I guess I'm just going to have to stick to the highlights that I feel are important. As always, masks don't work. They actually cause harm in many different ways. Since the real science actually proves this, that leaves no other explanation as to why the federal, state, and local entities such as yourselves have chosen to participate in the destruction of our children's health, mental well-being, and right to an education, other than pure evil and personal gain. And if you don't think this is true, just watch what happens now that Senator Leahy has finally decided to retire. It will inevitably end up in a typical game of musical chairs as they all scramble and shift around to see who sits in what chair next and what lucky one will ultimately get to claim the Senate seat. And you can bet that that will include Phil Scott. Aside from the masks, Mr. Scott also thinks it is his job to come after our kids with needles full of poison that many like to call vaccines to make themselves feel better about what they are doing. Doesn't anyone find it odd that the state that once touted one of the highest vaccine rates in the country is now struggling with one of the highest rates of COVID in the country, supposedly? That would mean that the common denominator here would be the vaccine. It is clear that these vaccines obviously don't work. Mr. Scott and Mr. Levine can claim all they want that most of the sick people are the unvaccinated, but do the math. That simply is impossible based on the high vaccination rates that they like to hang their hats on. They can't have it both ways. The majority of the people suffering from COVID right now are the vaccinated, and the constant masking is actually making that worse by further suppressing what little immune system they have left. Wake up, a child can see this truth, and you certainly don't need a medical degree either. Just a little bit of researching and a need to know the truth. After all, the ones with the medical degrees are either incompetent or lying to us, both of which are disgusting. Take these useless, harmful masks off of our children and stop coming after them with needles full of poison by supporting pop-up vaccination clinics on school grounds just to hit a number that will yield all of us absolutely nothing. They are not your children, they're ours. And they have a 99.8% immunity against this. It doesn't even hardly affect kids. Their rates of surviving this and getting over it are better than the regular flu. And I've got a copy of a couple of FOIA letters that people submitted to the CDC. If anybody wants copies, I'm more than happy to send them to you. But it says right in here, in the CDC's own response to one woman, it says, the CDC is not aware of any randomized control trials that show that masks or double masks or cloth coverings are effective against COVID-19. And the other FOIA request regarding vaccines.
Tim, I'm going to have to cut you off there. I would encourage you please to send along any additional comments. You are out of time, but please send those along to the board, and we'll be able to review those.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the speaker list is Jessica Barber.
Thanks, Devin. It's Jessica Borbo. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
When you're ready.
Okay. As a parent, community member, and local business owner here in Swanton, I can start over. As a community, as a parent, community member, and local business owner here in Swanton, my family wants to say thank you. Mr. Dodge, Miss Jeanette, Mr. Pacina, Mrs. Hakey, Mr. Hartman, and Mr. Palmer, thank you for your countless hours that you spent during your busy school days, during your evening hours, and on your weekends, contact tracing and preparing in all the ways required of you to maintain a safe learning environment in our district elementary schools and middle school. Mrs. Regenball, thank you for making some really tough decisions in the best interests of our children. Thank you all for your endless dedication to our children's safety and education. Your efforts in this area have not gone unnoticed, and it's our hope today to represent some of the grateful individuals in the district that you serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next is Sarah Nielsen.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sarah Nielsen, and I'm a resident of Swanton, and I have a high school student at MVU. And I wanted to also start with a request of the board that has nothing to do with COVID. So a turn of topics on you. So I would like to request that the board request the MVSD to do a presentation on standards-based grading. I actually was at a presentation of the standards-based grading, I think maybe 5 years ago, and I was able to get some input and information based on the initial rolling out of the standards-based grading, and I feel like at this point I don't fully understand it, and I would like some additional information. I was going to request that just of the high school, but I think it might be helpful for it to be an MVSD-wide discussion, because I think it probably impacts more than just the high school students. And then I would also like to thank the board for all you've done to keep our children safe. I think it's been a hard task, and I applaud you for following the guidance provided to you by the experts. None of us are epidemiologists or public health experts, so at this point that's the best that we can do, and I think the board has done that, and I appreciate that. I have had the opportunity throughout the pandemic to work in the emergency department, the urgent care department, as well as the hospital floor, and I have seen firsthand what is happening in the medical side of things, and I think that at this point, anything that we can do to keep our community safe is certainly appreciated, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That is the end of the sign-up sheet from, just a second, one again. All right, so we'll go online. Kelly Rainville.
Robert, a couple of the kids just want to say thank you after they sign up.
Susan Evans,
Yeah, did I miss somebody, Robert?
you missed a couple of our younger community members here. They didn't sign in, but they did want to say a quick word if we could.
Yep, it's fine. Just please state your name if you could, or
This is Charlotte Godin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To say your name. Natalie Borbo.
Natalie Borbo.
And what do you want to say?
Thank you. Audrey Borbo, and I would like to say thank you. Natalie Borbo, thank you. My name is Charlotte Underwood, thank you. My name is Ken Williams, and I'd like to say thank you. I want to say thank you.
all right. Thank you all. We love when kids are able to come to our meetings in any capacity. So thank you all for coming, and thank everyone there who made public comment. At this time, I will turn to the online comments and recognize Kelly Rainville.
If someone would like to start my video, I'd appreciate it.
Comment to you, Kelly?
There. Thank you. I'm joining you today because we have a serious problem with the support staff at MVU. We have a grievance in line has gotten as high as Mrs. Regenball. She has responded to the grievance, and that response has been summarily rejected by those support staff in the grievance. I just want to make the board aware that I wasn't able to ask ahead of time for to be put on the agenda for this meeting. The support staff were supposed to join me. I see a couple names on here that, but their hands are not raised. So I don't know if they're going to be able to comment or not. We have a serious problem with the work environment, the lack of discipline, the lack of support for those doing behavioral intervention work. We have instructional assistants that are doing behavioral intervention without training and without consent. We've asked from day one to be paid for that job and to be trained for that job, and have had no response, hence the grievance. And I find it kind of a real schism between what happens at MVU and what happens on the elementary level. We have a support staff who was an IA in Swanton, who was given a student with a behavior plan. And she said, I'm happy to do this, but I want training and I want to be paid. And she contacted Bonnie Moulton and was immediately given a BI contract, and the BI is paid. So I don't really understand why that can happen at the elementary level and we get nothing but pushback and hard feelings for asking for it at the high school level. It doesn't make any sense. We're all under the same contract. We're all serving the same kind of kids. So why is there a schism? And it's actually become very dangerous. We have two highly trained BIs who are working as it's called CAT workers. They're NCSS CAT workers who take on the serious behavior problems within the school. We cannot get those workers in, so our most highly valuable BIs are doing that work and are doing it without support. They're supposed to be a consulting teacher, helping them, giving them plans. How do you handle these kids? They literally walked into this one student that they have. There's like a 20-page behavior plan that was not given to them until a teacher requested it for them.
10 seconds.
So I'd like the board to be aware that this is coming down the pipe and that they are literally losing people, workers, day by day because there's been no response.
All right, thank you, Kelly. I won't respond to that at this time, but just other than to say thank you, and I assume we'll receive some more information from you on those topics. All right, seeing no other hands at this time, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda review. Do we have any amendments to make to the agenda for tonight?
I do not.
All right, so we'll move to the consent agenda. I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 2nd. Do I have that motion? Terry's the first. Toby's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Let me make sure I can see all the board members here for the vote. We've got a couple screens. All right, those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right, motion carries 7-0. And next we have a presentation for the After School Crossroads program.
So I have Beth Ann Miller is here to give a presentation, and I am going to tee it up while she introduces herself.
Thank you, Julie. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. So I am Beth Ann Miller. I'm the not so new anymore after school program director. It's been about 1.5 years now, but I keep saying that first year doesn't seem like it counts. So I really feel like I'm in it to win it now. And it's been a really wonderful experience so far. So thank you so much for your time tonight as I give you a little overview as to what we've been up to and all that good stuff. So Julie, am I able to share my screen or will you be presenting? I think. Oh, great. Thank you. So for those of you that are not super familiar with our programs, I will just sort of read through some of our messaging here. So next slide, thank you. Our mission is to help children and teenagers of all backgrounds, I really like to emphasize all backgrounds, thrive and become successful, happy, informed citizens. We aim to create and expand opportunities for all students to engage in leadership development, creative enrichment, healthy lifestyle and fitness choices, social awareness, workforce skill building, and hands-on experiential academic support. So as you can see, we don't set the bar too high for ourselves. I really think after school is an incredible space to continue supporting the incredible kids in our community. And I think we have wonderful staff that also support this mission. So I won't read through the entire page, but Julie, if you'd like to go to the next one. So we have a lot of goals, and I inherited a very rich program from Carol Lazat, and she forged the way in a lot of ways to create really substantive quality programming. And it's my goal to continue on that path and continue to improve. So one of our, here's our goals: improve school day performance, improve school day attendance, improve overall health and well-being, improve self-esteem, encourage participants to try new things and develop new skills, provide role models and examples that help to foster responsible citizens. And that's another thing I really like to focus on here is that, the students in our community, they're not just students, they're not just children, they are citizens of our community, and we should be treating them as such. Next, please. So this is just a little glimpse of our budget here. As you can see, we are primarily funded through our 21C grant, which is a really fantastic. We have a lot of support from them. We have a great structure in place to continue this grant moving forward. We are currently in our 3rd year of this grant cycle, our 4th year of this grant cycle, and it's a 5-year grant. So we will be approaching renewal soon. And as you can see here, we have several other sources as well that provide our funding. We manage and maintain our SFSP and CACFP food grants. As well as we do receive donations from some very generous folks in the community, and we absolutely appreciate those, as well as, of course, our local funding. Next, thank you. So because I am still relatively new to this community, a little background on myself briefly. I've worked with kids my whole life. My mom was a preschool teacher in Heinsberg, Vermont, and I volunteered in working in the preschool as soon as I was able to, and I have a rich history in summer camps. I've directed different programs, and then in college, I was our community service coordinator for the campus and arranged tutoring programs. And really, I've always been involved working with kids and have always really enjoyed it. My professional career, however, is in writing and higher education. I was a college professor before taking this position here, and I am a published creative writer with an MFA in writing. So when this opportunity came across my plate, it was really fantastic to recognize that this is such an incredible opportunity for me to grow professionally and for me to share my skills with this community. So here are some of the things I've been doing to attempt to get to know the community, and I am always interested in getting to know more. So please, reach out, keep throwing stuff at me. As you can see here, I'm currently our Vermont Youth Project lead. I am a portrait of a graduate facilitator. I'm working on ongoing collaborations with Circle of Courage and all of our libraries and rec centers. I'm currently a mentor in our Vermont After School STEM Pathways Leadership Program. I'm part of the Swanton Communications Committee, and I'm also very much embedded in MVSD's process in general with the continuous improvement, central office leadership, et cetera. Another, just kind of showing off a little bit of what we really are intending to do here. This is something I've been immersing myself as well as my staff in, because we really very much support our staff being trained and intentional about this programming. So we are contributing to Vermont After School's feedback and data for the state of Vermont as they continue to look for more funding. We successfully completed our 21C site review and CACFP audit, which was really fun. We attended and completed all of our trainings. We've gone to conferences. We've received some grants. So again, this is something just to show that our staff is incredibly intentional about what we're doing, and we're really trying to stay relevant here so we can truly serve the community. Next, please. Thank you. So this summer, as you are all probably aware, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we did to expand the programming. And it seems impossible to imagine summer right now, considering I saw snow in Highgate this afternoon. But we were really encouraged and had a ton of support to do what we could to offer quality and more programming this summer in response to COVID-19. So we were able to open up for full day programming, which was really incredible. It included breakfast and lunch meals, transportation, all that kind of stuff. And in addition to our typical full day summer camp format, which included tutoring and summer school for the students and families that wanted it, we also offered some other special programming, such as Teen Leadership Series, Paddle Adventure. We had some temporary outdoor classroom structures in which we were able to do yoga and storytelling and all kinds of cool stuff. And we hosted our summer passport, where we printed out a bunch of booklets that were, actually, I think the next slide explains it. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. No, I'll explain the summer passport later. It was really cool. So this is again, just an example of how our funding is broken down. And we received, again, some really incredible support to offer this to our students. So we were able to serve many students this summer, approaching 350 students took advantage of our programs, to the point that we just couldn't fit anymore. It was pretty, that's a good problem to have, I think, when it comes down to it. And for the students that we weren't able to accommodate in our programs, we were able to offer them scholarships to the Swanton Rec Summer Program. So we also were able to help out some kids attend those programs for free. And our programs, of course, are completely free for our families. We also served a total of 4,246 meals, which seems remarkable to me because it's not an easy thing. So thanks to the Abbey Group for helping us out with that too. Next, please. Thank you. There's our summer passport. So this again was something that we were really, really proud of this year. And the reason I'm talking about it now in November is because it forged a really incredible collaboration with our community members. This was a team effort from all of our rec centers, Franklin, Highgate, Swanton, and all of our public libraries, to create something for the community that not only provided enriching, healthy activities that can bring families together, but also to highlight the strengths of our community. There are so many things going on around here, and I think it's often easy to overlook that. So we were really excited to put this together, and it was an incredible team effort. Next page, I think, is just a little sample. These were some of the first two kind of prompt challenges in the book. So many families did a ton of them. Some of them added their own twist, which was pretty cool. And then at the end of the summer, we hosted a celebration at Highgate Rec with free ice cream donated by Island Ice Cream, I believe is the name. And we had a ton of fun celebrating that. And we're looking forward to doing more stuff like this to, again, continue highlighting how awesome this community is. So just a quick overview of what we were able to offer this summer, thanks to these efforts to expand the programming. We had some really great field trips. We had some really great visitors. As you can see here, Pleasant Valley Farms, they brought some cows over to Franklin Central, and our kids were able to engage with those cows and learn about dairy farming. Ernie Hemingway hosted a 1-week kind of crash course in dramatics at each school, and it culminated in a performance at each school in just the matter of 5 days. It was, and I was at every performance, and they were all awesome. We went on a field trip to Enosburg Sculpture Park. Mike in the Big Blue Trunk visited for Highgate's field days. Virginia Holyman did storytelling. Kurt Valento was doing nature at our fingertips at every single school. We had a lot going on, mountain biking and hiking. So we're really looking forward to what we can pull off next year too. And then currently right now in the fall, we also have some special projects and collaborations going on that we're very excited about. We are working on a project called STEM Pathways. It's a teen mentoring and workforce development series in which MVU students are trained in being essentially classroom leaders in specific STEM curriculum. So we have sort of our pilot program right now in Highgate, and our MVU students meet with me and our site coordinator, Ellen, as their mentors a couple times a month, and they host classes for our elementary students. I think it's an incredible model. It's been a ton of fun working with this, and we're hoping to continue increasing this so we can offer this professional development to our very talented teens. We are in year 3 of the Vermont Youth Project. Typically we do a survey in October, but this year it'll be in February. And this survey really just takes a look at substance abuse and use and safety in the community and what we can do to support teens and really help them live in a safe community that they're proud of. We are in the 2nd year of Portrait of a Graduate, which we actually have our first real in-person meeting on Thursday, which is pretty exciting. We had a really successful launch party a couple weeks ago in which students gathered at each school and then all zoomed into one conference call. And the Portrait of a Graduate is really looking to paint a picture of what our students want, who they are, and what they want to be in our community. And I think there's something so incredibly powerful about listening to student voice and allowing them to have agency in this process. And this is also a school day effort. After school kind of adopted a piece of it to help support, and I'm really glad that we're a part of it. And as you can see, we've got a ton of other stuff going on, but I think that I'm running over time, so I will skip on to the next one. These are some of the programs we're offering right now. We do have a special format called Open Spaces, and this was another thing in response to COVID with limited rooms available and needing to keep students in certain pods and all that kind of stuff. We do our very best to keep everybody safe and healthy and to work with the school day to make sure that we're not messing up their very organized structure. So Open Spaces essentially is themed each day at each school, and we offer as many engaging, enriching activities, oftentimes at request of the students. But additionally, you can see we have a lot of other stuff going on too. Performing arts and Chinese culture club, lots of good stuff. This is what our current enrollment looks like. In September and October, we served a total of 184 students. We are now up to 202 in our November and December session. We did have to cap our in-person enrollment simply to keep our students safe. As we all know, staffing is a challenge. So in order to have the appropriate adult-child ratio, we did have to cap. Each school has a little bit of a different number, and we will reevaluate that at the end of this session. But in collaboration with the principals and the superintendent and our 21C grant, we decided it was best to keep our in-person programming relatively limited. Thank you, Julie. So in response to that, we are attempting to offer some behind the scenes remote and virtual programming for just, again, because we're not able to provide the space for all students that we'd like to. So we are doing a pilot program yet again in Highgate. I'm realizing is really just our little guinea pig here for a lot of our very cool programs. We are starting it with this Thanksgiving break, and the idea is that each school break, students can sign up for either virtual or remote programming that should provide 5 to 10 days of instructions, materials, links, etc. It's free of charge, and we've had I actually today was covered in those little googly craft eyes as I was also preparing for this presentation. It was a lot of fun. So these are the 3 programs we're offering in Highgate right now. We just finished assembling these kits. And one of the things that we're really working on here, as you can see, we have, they're craft based, but each one involves detailed instructions, context, whether it's history or the culture around something or whatever it may be. We provide a little blurb about, why is this project happening and what does this project mean, with a space for reflection questions. So even if it's something as simple as making a turkey puppet, we provide fun turkey facts and then say, what is it that, can you reflect upon a memory of your favorite Thanksgiving meal or anything like that, really just to get kids thinking and active and moving and reflecting on their own work. So I am super excited to see how it goes. We'll find out in a couple weeks. So again, just as a little introduction into what we do, it's more than just hosting a couple programs after school and providing that supervision, because that is certainly a valuable service. But we, in addition to following our very high quality district standards and our 21C standards, part of that 21C process involves the SEL PQA evaluation. So that's the program quality assessment, in which each program, our site coordinators at every site assemble a team and have that team review our after school classes, and then using a very detailed, what they call toolkit, they evaluate the quality of each program down to the way staff interacts with students, or the welcoming environment that students walk into, or the agency and authority that students have in their planning process. So we did it last year. It was all virtual last year for obvious reasons. So this year is our first year that we'll be able to invite small teams into our programming to really evaluate that in person and see how it goes. We think it's a really fantastic way for us to continue improving all the time. Thank you, Julie. This is just a quick graph about what this really is measuring, right? So it's really focusing on environment, safe, supportive, interactive, and engaging. And as we all know, this is very much embedded in SEL practices that we work on too. So really making sure that we are doing everything we can to create these environments. We also have our annual performance report that we, again, it's super fun collecting all this data, but we are constantly, in addition to hosting these programs, we are tracking all of this and reporting it to the federal government. So we are doing attendance in comparison to total school enrollment. We will be sending out surveys to teachers who will then help us evaluate improvement or decline, I guess, in school day performance from the kids that attend our programs. We report upon our staff, teachers, and community involvement, and we collect data on gender, race, grade, and much of this is utilized for us to make sure that we are accessing and providing a space for, again, all students. Any student that wants to be involved feels like they can be, and that's a huge mission of mine. So as tedious as this data reporting is, it does end up being helpful in understanding which communities we can serve better. We always love hearing from our families, and if any of you have participated in our programs, please know that I read every single comment. We look at every single picture, and we love hearing from you. We also, we take feedback as well. We take constructive criticism. So we're again, always looking to improve. But one thing that we've noticed recently is whether it's a take-home kit, families seem to really enjoy the fact that they can become engaged off the screen. Much of this does not involve a screen at all. So when our students take home a kit, maybe there's a video they'll watch for instruction purposes, but a lot of it is grounded, hands-on in front of them. Families really seem to appreciate that. And of course, when we opened up for in-person, they really loved the social aspect, allowing their kids to be with their friends again and just have a flexible schedule and just hang out. We have a new handbook, which nobody's excited about except me because I had to write it. But it was part of our 21C review process. So I inherited a ton of fantastic content to work with and reshaped it into a format that really works for our current programming. And the 21C grant folks actually asked if they could use it as a template and model for new program directors around the state. So it's kind of cool that we are an example for other programs around the state now. We do have some cool events coming up, and depending upon each school, of course, we are still very cautious of COVID and having too many guests come in. So all of these events, of course, you'd want to touch base with me or a site coordinator. But I did want to say that in a perfect world, when we're all allowed to hang out again, there are some really great things going on that we'd love to invite you to. So for instance, Highgate Actors Theater has their final performance this Thursday afternoon. Which I actually just watched the dress rehearsal today, and it's based on Where the Wild Things Are, which is fantastic. Swanton Elementary will be hosting a talent show. Vermont Youth Council will start hosting events. We have our Portrait of a Graduate meetings with our very cool students. We also have our MVU Leadership Series that will be starting soon, because at this point, we have at least 20 MVU students either volunteering, asking to volunteer, or working with us in paid positions. So we're creating a leadership series to really streamline and better shepherd these very ambitious students into a professional role. And we are looking for guest speakers. So we also have the Chinese Culture Club Pen Pal meet and greet. It'll be a virtual meet and greet that the kids in our Chinese Culture Club, they have real live pen pals all the way in China, and they're hoping to do a virtual event that we can invite folks to. And how am I doing on time, Juliet? Should I just wrap her up now? Okay. We had a great conversation with our after school advisory board. Here are some of the questions we pondered. You can actually go to the next slide, Julie. We asked about staffing. How can we support our staff? How can we help with this crazy burden that everybody's facing? And these were some of the ideas that the advisory board came up with. So refreshments, providing curriculum and materials, et cetera, et cetera. We asked about student needs. How can we really provide an authentic support in this crazy time? We talked about how continuity with the school day is key, allowing for social and flexible time, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm, again, always happy to have a conversation, always happy to talk more about this. And we have a fantastic advisory board that I'm really looking forward to meeting with again soon. I believe that's it. So thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your time. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions or need any additional materials, I'm pretty easy to find. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Beth Ann. Do any board members have any questions or comments for Beth Ann? Don?
Yes, I want to thank Beth Ann for coming in. This program has been around for a number of years, and from what I hear in our community, she has built on the fine job that Carol did. So I wish her well to keep it going and expanding it, and hopefully locally we can continue to support it. Thank you.
Anyone else? I had one question, Beth Ann. You touched on it a little bit. During the school year, you're limiting sizes a little bit just because of some staffing constraints. It sounds like we're also kind of bursting at the seams in the summertime. Are there different limitations during the summertime that we should be aware of?
That's a great question. This summer, we actually had more flexibility. As you know, there was sort of that breath of fresh air for a hot second before everything happened again. So looking forward to next summer, it really depends on health guidance. Outside of that, we were able to secure transportation. That was a bit of a struggle at first, but then we were able to make it work. So I actually looking forward to next summer, depending upon the state of the country. I don't anticipate a ton of limitations. Each school is a little different. It is the conversations with our principals begin in January. So we celebrate the holiday and then we start thinking about summer. So if there are any constraints, we'll know more. We'll know more then.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll be interested to know if there's anything we can do to help make sure all the students who want to be able to attend can attend. All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda are the administrative reports from the elementary school teachers. And sorry, I don't know who went first last time. So Yeshua, you're first on my screen. So if you don't mind, I'll hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Devin. I also do want to shout out to Beth Ann. You are doing great work, and Ellen at our after school program is doing fantastic at Highgate. So I thank you all for your work. Just a few of the updates. We have the Name a Plow event tomorrow. So I think I mentioned before that each elementary school could submit a name. Ours is the Ice Crusher, and the plow is coming to the school parking lot tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we'll all go outside for about 10 minutes or so while they put the name on the truck. And I think kids will be surprised how big snow plows are, because I don't think they ever see them, kind of up close and personal. So that will be exciting. We also have the 16th annual craft fair going on at Highgate, which is arranged by mostly Angela Carr and the PTO, which is very exciting. They're glad to have it happening. We're going to start, do some setting up Friday, and then they'll have the event on Saturday. If anybody wants to make some pies, they're looking for some pie donations. So if anybody out there to the MVSD universe is good at making some pies, we could use some and maybe get them in on Friday or Saturday. We did have fortunately, we had Tina Bugrin, who came today for all of our new teachers, and I was able to stop by Swanton quite briefly just to say hi. She works through Marzano Research Institute and talks about our instructional framework. And Tina is probably one of the best presenters that I've ever seen. It's an incredible resource for our new teachers. And I know when I got to speak briefly with the two new teachers they had lots of great ideas, great conversation, and just great time to reflect as a teacher, because we wish we had more time in our days to be able to do that. So that was an incredible opportunity. We also have Leah Marmelstein coming back to us on Thursday, and she is our writing specialist, and she'll actually model some lessons, and teachers will get time to look at that and figure out what they've learned from it to help improve their writing instruction. So that was great. We have the Test to Stay program, as everybody kind of knows, and that was incredible for us this week. We would have had a classroom completely home all week if it wasn't for that. And 11 out of the 14 students have been here every day and not having that loss of learning. So we're definitely very fortunate, and certainly want to shout out to Mrs. Regenball on that, because she really pushed for that to happen in our district. And we had those tests and were signed up very quickly. So I certainly appreciate that, because I'm glad our students are still in the classroom. And today I got to meet for the first time with my student leadership team. It took me a little bit longer to get them organized than I would have liked. But I have about 14 fifth and sixth graders who are working on supporting our younger students at lunch and recess. And they're going to organize some games with students at recess. We decided to start small and then see how it went. But they were very eager today and very excited. And we even tried to come up with a new name for our group, which I think was really exciting, because they were excited about that. And I think that's pretty much, I actually forgot to do my little story, right? I always try to have some sort of fun story with kiddos. I got feedback again about announcements, and I had an adorable note from a first grade young lady who just asked if I could come find her, essentially, so she could kind of talk about the feedback. And she thought, I'm doing okay with the pledge, but sometimes when I talk, I'm a little fast. So she would prefer that I kind of slow down. So again, I'm working on being successful with announcements, but I just thought it was great. She was very excited when I came in, and some of the other kids kind of giggled and were all excited. So It was great to get that feedback, and things are going pretty well at Highgate, although it's incredible to think that we are almost at Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Yeshua. Any questions or comments for Yeshua? Seeing none. All right. Thanks again, Yeshua.
Absolutely.
All right. Next, Chris for Swanton.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I think one of the really great things about working in a district that's as unified as MVSD is that we get to share in a lot of these really great experiences together. So I feel like in part, I could just say, yeah, what Yeshua said, but I'll add to it a little bit. So we did host Tina Bugren today at Swanton for our first and second year teachers. And like Yeshua mentioned, Tina works on both instructional strategies with teachers, but also wellness strategies with teachers. And she today was my first opportunity to meet Tina. And she just does such a really wonderful job of weaving together strategies for instruction and strategies for helping our newer teachers feel supported and to be well, especially in a difficult year. So that was a great experience for us. We also have started Test to Stay in the morning, and that's taken off pretty quickly for us. We have most recently been testing well over 100 students in the morning. And I just really want to give a shout out to our two nurses, Wendy and Danielle, and Justina, who have worked really hard to make those mornings be efficient and as unintrusive and as least intimidating as possible for students. And they really are. I was commenting to Julie today, they are impressively efficient in the morning. And so that's going really well. And as Yeshua mentioned, that's allowing our students to stay in school and stay in class. And that's really the goal of that. So we're really excited about Test to Stay and how that's allowed us to identify a small handful of positive cases and make sure that we've controlled that spread, but also to keep our kids in school. We have a couple of vaccination clinics being held at school coming up as well on November 30th and December 21st. In these clinics, the Department of Health offers 200 slots. We're about 2/3 full with our slots right now. Some really exciting news that we got today is that they are also able to offer a very small number of slots to our staff members who are not vaccinated or who would like to get the booster vaccination. So our clinics are really considered pediatric clinics, so they're not open to the general public for adults, but we're glad to be able to support our teachers in that way. We have 10 teachers, or 10 staff members, I should say, signed up right now to receive their booster shots, and 2 staff members signed up to receive their initial vaccinations during our clinic. So we're really happy to not only be supporting our students, but supporting our staff in having easy access to that as well. In January, we're going to start a really exciting partnership with the Echo Leahy Science Center. Our kindergarten, at least one of our kindergarten teachers is going to work on a really substantial partnership in bringing science, technology, engineering, and math learning into her classroom. The Echo Center is going to provide a real abundance of resources for us and materials in the form of teaching kits that will stay in the classroom. So their work really is around creating sustainability, working with that teacher on instruction and leaving those materials with us. So we're very excited about that partnership, and also partnering with the Echo Center to provide our STEM night that will happen later in the spring. So we've got some exciting things happening with Echo. We are just starting on a journey as part of MVSD to do an MTSS audit. So MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Support. And that really takes into account all the different layers of social, emotional, and academic supports that we provide to our students. And one of the goals this year is to work on an audit and take a look at those systems, not only in our individual schools, but district-wide, to think about areas that we can celebrate and areas that we can always improve as part of our continuous improvement process. So we've pulled together a leadership team at Swanton that has broad representation, and we're going to be taking a look at our own systems and providing that feedback to go into the bigger project that the district's doing. So we're excited about taking that look as well. We had a great collaboration between our art and music teachers to create a Veterans Day video. If you didn't have a chance to see that, it's a really nice art and music collaboration. The link is in my written report and it's on our social media as well. So that was a nice celebration. Our school watched that video all together simultaneously in their own classrooms, but at the same time, which is about as close to a whole school assembly as we're doing right now. But that was a really exciting and creative project. And like Yeshua, the last thing on my list is tomorrow we are also having a Big Orange Plow visit come at 9 o'clock. Each of our grade levels was invited to submit a name to me for the state's Name a Plow contest, and all of our grade levels did that. We then voted school-wide on that. And so we have the Maple Creamy Cruiser coming to Swanton tomorrow to visit us. That's the name of our truck, and our students will also go out and visit them. So we have lots of exciting things going on.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions or comments for Chris? I'm curious, Chris, having the most students there, and presumably that means the most test to stay volumes in the morning. One of the challenges I've heard from community members is the length parents have to wait to get the results before they can head off to work. I assume it was kind of a learn on the job kind of situation at first. How's that developing?
So we actually haven't asked parents to stay and wait for those results. There have been a couple of rare cases where a parent might want to stay, but we aren't asking parents to stay at this time. The system that we're using is the state system that's electronic. Parents have registered to first give consent and then enter their information in order to get an electronic result directly from the Department of Health. So students are dropped off. Most of our students come on the buses, so they aren't with parents anyways. They come in, they're tested. That's a very efficient process. We enter the result into the system, and very quickly parents get an electronic result. So we really don't have parents waiting at all as a result of test to stay.
Okay, so if it came back as a positive, then the parent would have to come get them.
That's
Gotcha.
right.
Okay, thank you. It's good to know. All right. Thanks, Chris. Joyce for Franklin.
Okay. Well, I hope there's no snowstorm tonight because we're expecting a plow tomorrow at 9 o'clock too. We did the same thing as Chris did, and we had different classes submit a name, and then the whole school voted. It was a good lesson for me in democracy because it wasn't a name I would have chosen probably. So anyway, we'll have a plow tomorrow at 9 o'clock too. Let's see. We were really excited to have our 4 Winds nature science program come back in person this year. That is a wonderful program to get kids and community members and staff outside and really looking at science right in nature and getting in the outdoors. And last year we did it virtually, but when the point of the program is to get outside, it was Debbie Berger, our volunteer coordinator, did a super job even last year, but she is really happy to be back in the school this year. There are monthly presentations, and Stephanie Ho is helping her out with that. Each of the programs is aligned to the next generation science standards, and the kids just really love it. And as I said, it's hands-on, they get outside, and they do a whole lot of learning and have a whole lot of fun. And I think you can see that in some of the pictures that I put in the report. This first one was collecting bugs and what makes a bug an insect. And they just had a great time with that. But we really appreciate all the hours that Debbie and the other volunteers put in. October, I spent a ton of time in October, and I'm usually done in October, but it spread into November, meeting with every certified staff member regarding their formative goals for the year. It takes a lot of time, but it is just so wonderful to be able to sit down one-on-one and talk with every teacher, school psychologist, guidance counselor, special educator, and really talk with them about how the year is going, what's going really well, what are they concerned about, what do they want to celebrate, and what are their goals for the year. And they talk about their formative goals, which they've handed in writing prior to the meeting, and what their goals are and how those goals are related to the Marzano instructional framework, and how their goal is relevant to our school and district goals, and how their goals are going to impact on student learning. So I really love having those meetings, and just really a wonderful opportunity to sit and talk education one-on-one with each person. We celebrated Red Ribbon Week the last week in October. That's the National Anti-Drug and Alcohol Week, and a lot of great classroom activities went on. We also had our theme days that I put in a couple of those pictures, Too Bright to Do Drugs and Team Up Against Drugs, and really great participation by the staff and students, and kids made posters, and just a really nice week that our new guidance counselor really helped facilitate. And as Beth Ann said, we were very excited about Portrait of a Graduate getting started again. We're happy to have 5 Franklin students want to participate this year. I'm so disappointed I won't be able to go this Thursday because I had a previously scheduled meeting, but I know the kids are looking forward to it. And what else? Oh, at our November faculty meeting, each teacher presented their SMART goal. Their SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time limit for their classes for the next couple of months. And that would be based on their classroom data. They come up with a SMART goal. So teachers shared those at our November meeting. We also had a Veterans Day assembly. We had a whole school assembly. It was the first time we'd been able to hear the chorus sing for a while, and they did the Star Spangled Banner, and that is such a hard song, and they did a super job with that. And we will be having a guest speaker. We had to reschedule for next Tuesday. And I also put in the picture, all the classes made cards, and every class kind of does something different, and just so touching what the kids do for those cards for Veterans Day. And those will be brought to the Veterans Home in White River. And they just do a super job on that. And facilities wise, big thing is we have the 2 new boilers are up and running, and there's a couple little hiccups at the beginning, and I put that in my report, but everything now is running smoothly. And that's all going really, really well. And I did want to mention, we are trying to do our ski program this year. We go usually 5 or 6 times to Jay Peak. And I know some of you have, wanted to get more involved with some of the schools. And I know how busy all of you are, but I'm still going to put in a little plug for if anybody likes to ski. We are kind of worried about getting as many chaperones as we usually do. Some of the perks have changed a little bit for chaperones. So we are hoping to do that program this year. We would love to have anybody who would like to chaperone. You don't have to go all 6 times. Toby, are you raising your hand? Watch it. It's like being at an auction. I'll sign you up. So ski chaperone, we need people. And also the 4 Winds program. It's really nice if we have more volunteers for that. It totally is volunteer presentations. And right now, Debbie Berger and Stephanie Ho are doing most of the classes by themselves. So we really would love to get some more volunteers for that. And if you really are too busy, you can't volunteer for those things right now. We are going to be starting the food and money drive for the Enosburg Food Shelf right after Thanksgiving. So if you're too busy to volunteer, we also would love to have food donations, monetary donations to help decorate our giving tree and get those collections together for the Enosburg Food Shelf again this year. And I think that's it from Franklin.
All right, thanks, Joyce. Any questions, comments for Joyce? Peter?
No, it's all great presentations. I just have to, I can't let the naming of the snowplows go by. I think a great thing that VTrans put out. I went to the website today and looked at all the names. and they were really great. And but I have to say, I am partial to Swanton Maple Creamy Cruiser. That's just that builds everything into Vermont right there. I mean, I can just picture a snowplow going through, plowing people out and handing out creamies as they go. So, and any true Vermonter loves a creamy in January or July. So, good job.
All right, any other questions for the elementary administrators? All right. So next on the agenda is the MVU update. Mr. Hartman, I think that's you.
I guess this one comes to me, Devin. Thank you. And Julie, please feel free to jump in anytime that you want. Unfortunately, my report tonight is really not anything about naming state plows or anything of that nature. We have unfortunately been identified as a result of a playoff soccer game that we hosted back on October the 27th between the MVU girls and Lamoille. We received the day after that game a report from the Vermont Principals Association with a series of allegations and complaints against our fans and spectators, and in particular our student section related to inappropriate behaviors and comments that were allegedly directed toward the Lamoille players on that day. Later on, a version of this appeared both in the Lamoille Valley News and also was picked up by the Vermont Digger out of the Burlington area. In response to this, working with Julie and the Vermont Superintendents Association and also with the VPA, MVU conducted a series of interviews and investigations with multiple students that were in attendance. Unfortunately, we really were not able to ascertain a lot of particulars, especially as it related to what the allegations were. But John did include a very thorough report that I'm sharing with you tonight. More importantly, I think it's important for the board to know that the event, while involving MVU and Lamoille on this particular occasion, you don't have to be around very long to realize that inappropriate behavior and poor sportsmanship among fans and spectators throughout the state of Vermont, regardless of the size of the school or the activity or the sport, is on a tremendous increase to the point that both the Vermont Principals Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, and an additional group of superintendents up and down the Champlain Valley that Julie is a part of have been actively working together in an effort to try and improve behaviors. There are a whole series of continuums that have been recommended and suggested, leading up to obviously the more traditional ones. You go in and talk to a group of people, you remind them about what good sportsmanship looks like, what good sportsmanship is expected among your school and among anybody who's attending the event that day, up to and including prohibiting any spectators at future sports and activities. And I don't think it's going to be very long before some schools actually move in that direction. It is not a direction that we want to take initially, but it will be there if we need to do so moving into the winter sports season. And moving forward, as we head into the winter sports season at MVU, because that event on the 27th of October was the final fall sporting event here at MVU. On the 22nd, there will be a mandatory winter student athlete meeting on the topic of hazing, harassment, and bullying that will be led by Rick Farnham, who has been working with MVU for many years and is the former Director of Athletics at the University of Vermont, John Lumsden, and myself. In addition to that first time meeting with the larger group, John and I will then be following up with each individual sport during the, that will be participating and representing MVU during the winter sports season. This is a very serious situation, not limited, as I said, to MVU alone, but it is not the kind of news that we want, nor do we appreciate, nor do we think it should or will represent what we're all about.
I just want to thank Jay and John for being on top of this from the get-go. I mean, they were present at the game. They were right there with the students and participating with the athletic director from Lamoille in conversations. You know, they were right on top of this, notifying me. This is something that all schools are grappling with right now, and something that we're working with the VPA very closely as superintendents to make sure that games are officiated, that if things are need to be addressed right then and there in the game, that things are addressed right then and there in the game. I would not be surprised if games in Vermont are called and stopped right in the middle of the game if behaviors don't improve. People need to understand it is, you know, you can be cheering on your team, you can be saying we don't like the other team, but anything that's personal or racial or, you know, inappropriate in other ways, it's not acceptable, and Vermont schools are not going to accept it. So I'm very appreciative of all the work that Jay and John have already been doing. I mean, they've been having meetings even earlier this fall with teams when they felt folks were getting too rambunctious or there were complaints of other kind of nature. They get right on that with students and have meetings. So it's very disheartening, but it is something that everybody's taking quite seriously. And I appreciate you, Jay, coming. And since things are in the press, we want to make sure people know what the response is.
Any questions or comments for Jay? Peter?
Yeah, but I have one.
Oh, sorry, Don. I saw Peter first. So go Peter, then Don.
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead, Peter.
All right. No, I just like to thank Jay and Julie for giving the board an update. It is really disheartening to hear this, and it's obviously disheartening to see it in the paper because it reflects so poorly on our schools. And, you know, as a board, I know our board is trying to create a all-inclusive atmosphere. And, you know, we talk about a portrait of a graduate, and that's not what we're looking at. And so I am glad that you're taking this hard stance on it. I think we can't tolerate this. I think we have to have a strong response to it. Because it's just, you know, we don't get a lot of press for the things that we're trying to do. But when something negative comes out, you know, it hits the papers. And so it's going to take some time to recover, but I hope that we can head in the right direction and take the right stance and start working towards good sportsmanship. And I hope that we are encouraging and more than encouraging, demanding that from our coaches, that we are teaching good sportsmanship. And it is, I know we all want to win, and that's the name of the game. But to me, sportsmanship and being good people is more valuable in the end. So again, I thank you for your response to this.
Thanks, Peter. We'll go Don and then Toby.
Yeah. Jay and Julie, thank you for the update. I would ask that if things go along, we don't need every board meeting an update, but if things are happening, I, as one board member, would either have an update there, or if something like this gets out there, if a nice email just to the board members saying, maybe not all the details, but that you're dealing with an uncomfortable or incident or whatever. I have a question for Jay. Jay, what is being done at the officials level? I've been around long enough, like you have been around quite a while. Is there ongoing training so officials are sensitive to maybe a different type of action, bullying, name calling than maybe they were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago? You know, this whole thing, I remember a long while ago, but referees at basketball games would stop and say, if this does, stop the game. And if this doesn't stop, I'm forfeiting the game. I don't know what kind of training officials are getting now to have crowd control.
Referees, Don, still have that authority, and they still have the ability, if they deem working together with the schools to basically bring a game to an end, even though it is not officially concluded. There is ongoing training both for coaches as well as for officials, because obviously we're dealing in a very different culture and a very different world than we were dealing with 20 or 25 years ago. I think John can probably better address that to the board when he comes in to speak on the overall athletic program at your first meeting in December. And I will encourage him to come in and maybe share some of that with you.
Thank you, Jay.
Yep.
Toby?
So Don kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I'm just wondering, as far as more Julie and VPA, I got a sense that the officials are an important part of the whole conversation, I think, because they have a presence out there of authority just by the way they're dressed. They can control. So I just would encourage them to control it if they want, because I think they can be a big part in that. So maybe that included in discussions. And I also think parents and guardians in attendance at the game might need to be part of the larger discussion. So I have one other related question to that, but I have another one too. I'm wondering an update on. This one is quick. It's kind of yes or no, and it does kind of relate to this, but does the VPA have any public governance, or is it just governed by principals and retired principals? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Toby, I'll take a shot at it. When you say governance, what are you asking for?
Is there a board that oversees the VPA, or is it just principals? Because I've been to their website numerous times. I think they have a board that has oversight over, the VPA administrators that are employees. But I think that board, it's not public. You can't see it on their website that I could find. But they're making decisions for all our kids in public schools and independent schools. And I don't think there's any oversight by the public. I think it's an organization over the people overseeing the VPA, and their decisions are principals and retired principals, unless I'm wrong. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Don might be able to help me with this, but I do serve on one of the standing committees with the Vermont Principals Association, and that is the activity standards. And we are responsible for setting the guidelines and the parameters for all student activities, whether they be athletic or non-athletic in nature. There is an executive council, right, which is probably the number one governing body. And then, of course, there are the administrative positions of the executive director there are two actual associate directors for the Vermont Principals Association. One is in charge of student activities, the other is in charge of professional leadership and development. And then they have their office staff as well. But it is an organization that is predominantly made up of school administrators.
Yeah, I just think that that's part of a bigger conversation that boards should really tune into, because I think at the higher levels, when all of this was happening, not just MVU, but the Winooski, the other schools, there was talk about, what is the VPA? Who is there any oversight? And there was talk of even, should a different governing body be with some more public accountability, perhaps be involved in that? And I think, right now it might be school boards, but it's just something for us to think, because they are making decisions that affect kids in our schools, students in our schools. So that's why I was curious. I had a feeling it was basically kind of self-governed, and that I guess that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, they're not considered a public body in the same way that a school board is, because they're a professional organization. And so you're right, there have been some conversations about, other states have a third party organization that oversees athletics.
Yep. And so that's all I wanted to know for that as far as right now. But the other question I did have is, do we have any update on the vandalism to the fields that happened? And if that's like an executive session, I could understand that. I'm just curious if I don't expect there's much. Well, I don't really want to say that, but I know it's a difficult matter to probably investigate, but do we have any update? I guess that's my question.
I can tell you, Toby, that on the night of the trunk or treat back on the 29th or whatever of October, I was meeting with our SROs. We were both working that night up here. And he indicated that the Swanton Police Department were still investigating.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thanks. That's it for me.
Great. Thanks, Toby. I'm gonna try something real quick before I see Casey Fitzgerald has a hand raised. We have Steve listed here in our participant list, and I think it may be Steve Scott. I'm gonna unmute you, Steve. If it is you, could you just let us know that it is you?
Yes, it is, Devin.
All right. All right. Well,
sorry about that. It's my new run through on this new Chromebook, and I can see you, but you can't see me. But now I can tell that you can hear me.
All right, we can hear you, and I think somebody can get your camera working so we can see you as well.
Yeah,
so
I'm going to talk to Robert about that. Thank you.
Okay. And Robert, could you make Steve a co-host also so he can unmute himself when needed? Casey, go ahead,
Can
Casey.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was even allowed to comment on this, but just hearing this coming from a parent, I also kind of agree with Toby in the sense that this should not be put on just the referees, the coaches, the principals. Like, this is like parenting 101. Like, your child should be entering sports knowing how they should be acting. And if this has gotten this out of hand, which, I mean, I've read the news and seen a little bit of this, but I had no idea the extent of it. But this seems a lot about the parents and the expectations of what the parents should have for their children. I mean, I appreciate that referees stepping in at a point are ending the game, but this sounds like a parenting problem. And it sounds like these children's parents have not been involved enough in the sense that they should have pulled their children off of the field. I think it's too much pressure on people who should have not that much responsibility. This should be made a parental awareness, I guess. I don't know. This just is like appalling, and the representation of it. Students should be playing sports with a certain expectation from their parents. Like, I don't know. Just wanted to comment on that I agree with Toby in the sense that this needs to be at the parenting level, not so much pressure on the referees and the coaches, and certainly not the principals. That's it.
All right. Thanks, Casey. Anything else, Joanne?
So I just wanted to reach out and just say thank you for the update. I did also have the opportunity to go to quite a few high school soccer games. Unfortunately, none at MVU, but throughout the upper Division I. And student section, which I believe that's what Jay said, like some of these comments were coming from, they're pretty vocal throughout the state. And so I guess I have two questions. A couple of the schools that I went to before the game, there was a live announcement warning us, all of us, parents and students, that none of this would be tolerated. So I'm just curious, is this something that we think we could do prior to our winter sports? You know, like before a hockey game, before a basketball game? Is this an announcement that we can make? And my second question is, are we now on some sort of probation, you know, because this has happened once? Are we where if language was to be used again, whether on the field or from parents or student section, won't leave anyone out, the game would just be stopped with like no warning? Or is this a athletic director's call if something is heard? Is this a referee's call if something is heard? So I guess those are my two questions. If we could do announcements, and are we on some sort of probation?
I'll try to take your second question first if I can, Joanne. No, we are not on a probation at this particular point. I will tell you, however, that schools can get on probation through the Vermont Principals Association if they attain a certain number. Let's say, for example, in soccer, if your program or your team gets a certain number of red cards, which are game disqualifications, that's usually the number one barometer when it comes to having a hearing before the VPA to basically explain why your school should be allowed to continue or to compete in a VPA tournament. And again, I will say that MVU has been there before. 15 years ago, we were there, and we had to appeal before the VPA. And basically it was after they heard our appeal and they heard what steps we were going to put into place to prevent that kind of disqualification or behavior from happening. We were told, fine, this is your last opportunity. If there's another disqualification, your season is over. And they have done that with other schools in the past. In answer to your first question, we do read a statement prior to every game. As a matter of fact, prior to that particular game, the Vermont Superintendents Association had put out a much lengthier pregame announcement with much more detail and much more specificity as it related to what our expectations were for crowd behavior. And we read that day before that game. I later heard or overheard a parent say, well, I don't know why they read that because people don't listen to it anyway. So that's part of the mindset that I believe as a school we need to overcome. And I don't think it's necessarily only identifying what bad sportsmanship is. I think it's more important for us to begin to identify and to demonstrate what good sportsmanship looks like, and take it more from a more positive approach as much as we can. However, realizing very clearly, and people are going to have to understand that whether they're any spectator attending an event at MVU or anywhere else in the state of Vermont, because it's not just MVU that's dealing with this right now.
All over.
If you attend a sporting event in the state of Vermont, there's going to be a certain level of expectation. And if you can't conduct yourself to that level of expectation, we're going to play the games, but you're not going to be there to see them. And if that means that we start playing games in front of empty bleachers and ice arenas, we will go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously we've talked a great deal about how to do that progressively, and you know, we are all struggling with that. The superintendents are working together when an incident happens between schools. Yeah, so I'm again appreciative of the work that our administration is doing to work with students and families and let them know what's and do the prevention as well as just the reaction.
Right. Thanks. Anything else on that topic before we move on? All right, the next item on the agenda under new business is the Beehive unemployment insurance. Laura, I assume that's you.
Yes. Okay, so if the board remembers last meeting, we did bring a proposal to you in regards to transitioning our unemployment to rather than a straight reimbursable account to unemployment insurance with Visbit. And unfortunately, we didn't have action on the agenda, so we're just bringing that back. I believe the board was favorable, but we would need an official vote, and then I could send the documents to the board chair for signature.
How quickly do you need that signed, Laura? Knowing Chris is out of town.
Probably, I think next week would be fine.
Okay.
Well, Bonnie has already started the process with the Department of Labor, and that is the piece that takes the longer period of time.
Okay, so in that case, I'll accept a motion to authorize the board chair to sign the Beehive unemployment insurance agreement. I see a first from Toby, second from Dawn. Any discussion on this?
Kevin, I believe that the vice chair can sign that if it's prepared this
That's
week.
true, right? Because we had the motion at the beginning of the year, right, for the annual motion. So, all right. Either way, Laura can track me down if you need it quicker.
I can send it to DocuSign if that works tomorrow.
Sure. All right. Any other discussion on this? All right. If not, all those in favor of authorizing chair or vice chair sign the Beehive unemployment insurance agreement, signify by raising your hand. We're saying aye, Steve.
Steve says aye.
All right. An aye. All right. The motion carries 8-0. Next up is the FY23 budget draft number 2.
Okay, so I did share that information along with a notes document for your review. The overall increase over this year's budget is similar to what it was last month. It's at 5 points, or last meeting, I'm sorry, it's at 5.78%. Again, I think that is inclusive of as many expenses as we could probably foresee at this point in time. That does include, as I said before, additional ESSER funded or COVID funded opportunities that we have that we potentially would have time to phase in over time. And so we may be looking to adjust some of those, but specifically in this draft, as I had told you last month, we would be including contracted services, out of district placements, or service agreement increases or projections as we know them right now. Prior to getting into that, you'll notice the first bullet in my notes or my comments was actually tremendous news. I think I almost jumped out of my chair when this was shared by Visbit at the VASBO meeting last Friday. The health insurance premiums, rather than being at a 10 to 12% increase projection, are actually at 2.5 to 5.5, and that is absolutely huge. We haven't seen that low of a premium increase in a couple of years. Apparently that's due to changes in participation by some younger premium holders moving to a silver plan rather than the CDHP gold. So that's providing some savings to us. For us, that drop from 12% to what we have is now 5% in this draft is about $300,000. So it's a substantial amount of money. If it comes in at 2.5, that would be even better. We did receive also some information about dental. I have not adjusted that yet, but we're hoping they've requested that be level funded again, but it could go up to 3% as well. So somewhere between 0 and 3%, but not as much of a dramatic impact there with dental. We have met with Tanya Hayes, the Student Services Director, and worked with Marnie, who tracks all of our contracted services, looking at potential needs for next year for both gen ed contracted services, out of district placements, et cetera. That includes autism specialists, CAT workers, school-based clinicians, SBBCs or school-based behavior supports. It includes disability services, deaf and hard of hearing services. So really kind of a lot of issues that we contract for. Special ed services in general are projected, as we could have assumed, I guess, due to the pandemic and other issues, have increased or are projected to increase significantly. It's about $377,000 increase from budget to budget, last year's budget to this year's budget. It is extremely fluid. It is a projection. Obviously staffing issues, availability of services, how we provide those services, changes in special ed requirements and the laws there will all impact that. It's fluid anyway, but I think it'll be even more fluid over the next couple of years. So again, I'm hoping worst case scenario here, we do get reimbursed right now for those, but that is changing. So that reimbursement revenue will now be changed into a block grant. So we have to keep that in mind. So a lot of communication happening with Tanya, myself, and the other admins around this. But in this draft, again, it's quite an increase, changing those projections. We've also adjusted transportation services. If you remember last year, we did a 1-year renewal at a modest increase. And so we will need to go out to bid for transportation services, hopefully for another 3-year contract. So we've included another modest increase there. I did note that, as we're all aware, the fuel prices and staffing shortages will also have probably an impact of those contracted costs as well. So not to be pessimistic about what might happen with our rates, but we shall see. 3% on that is what I'm using, and that's about 51,000 right now. We've also included our new copier equipment lease that we have, and also our new audit services contract, which we know was level funded. So again, looking at all areas of contracted service. Municipal retirement rates have been updated about 0.5% for every group A, B, and C. And so I've given you that little kind of chart there to review. That is the employer contribution. The employees do contribute as well, but all have increased about 0.5%. I have the new unemployment insurance contract amount in here. And so that's about a $10,000 savings from what we had projected last draft. Let's see, cash in lieu payments. That's just simply a shift. I just wanted to point it out. There is now a variance column, as there's typical from draft to draft. And you will notice that cash in lieu payments, even though it's very, very minimal, we do not have very many staff at all receiving cash in lieu benefits, especially with the law change there in regards to school district employees. But I just wanted to point that out. And then to continue I believe, the intent of the board and investments in our facilities, I've added $100,000 again to the capital and construction line. We've been doing that each year since we've merged. Obviously, that's another topic for discussion if you'd like that to continue, but I think the intent was to continue to grow that line. So we have we're better prepared to deal with some of the smaller issues, and they're not all stacking up against us when it comes to our facilities, and we can handle some of those smaller capital items without having to add on to bonding or our performance contracting or other sources of funding. I think that's about it.
I also wanted, oh, sorry, Devin, I just wanted to throw out there that I do have thought exchange prepared for budget input from the community ready. I will be sending that out to the community this week.
And Julie and I also have scheduled meetings with all building level administration to review any proposals or adjustments that they may be thinking of as well. Those are scheduled for the last week of December, I believe. So your next draft would include potentially some adjustments from either one of those stakeholders.
That probably addresses where my question was headed around, potential staffing changes or programmatic changes, that kind of thing, from one year to the next. Just to, I know the board and community like to see the highlights on those those issues where we're changing staffing and changing programs.
Yes.
Any other questions for Laura at this time? Don?
Laura, what was the percentage increase from the budget 2 years ago to the current budget? When we went to town meeting last year, what type of percentage increase were we talking in local tax dollars?
From 2 years ago, Don?
Yes.
Oh, I'll have to do that. Can I email it to you? I don't have that in front of me right now. I'd have to do the math on 2 years ago.
I don't need it. I don't need it now, but
Yep.
And the other thing is, and I think I ask this question every 3 years, but our transportation bid has a escalator, de-escalator clause when it comes to fuel. So
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
50 cents, and they get something. Okay.
Yes, it does. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are we planning to do those videos that we did last year that were so well received?
They are part of our budget timeline that I shared by
thought they
school.
might
So
be.
yes,
Great. All
I
right.
think I thought they were a huge success last year. I thought we got a lot of good feedback. So
For
hopefully
sure.
we'll be doing those again.
Yeah, great.
Also, I understand that we have yet to look at any revenue information, and Julie was kind enough to remind me. Sometimes I put my blinders on and I just focus on the area that I'm working on. So we're starting to see some of that information come from the state. There's talks about the different weighting that might be happening. And we're starting to receive information about the special ed revenues and such. So we will be starting to look at that net ed spending amount, which is our spending minus our revenues. But I would encourage the board to start thinking about, while the expenditure budget and the percentage increase there is part of the equation, and I'm looking for feedback in that, of course, to start thinking about that spending per pupil that you are comfortable with. I can give you the information from last year, of course, to compare that to. We give state comparisons as well, but really that is where our tax rate calculation is calculated on. So if any of you have any information from last year, next month I will share some of that information, anticipated revenues, equalized pupil numbers, etc. But just to kind of put that, reminder out there that that's kind of what we need to be thinking about as the next month unfolds.
And just so, and I see Toby's hands up too, but to just reiterate that a little bit, your expenditure budget should be higher because we are spending COVID money on additional nursing, additional contracts for mental health services, additional behavior supports. We can't get enough of them right now into our schools. So, it's the revenue piece that really, it's that spending per equalized pupil that we really want to make sure that we're looking at. Not that we don't want to, as always, pay very close attention about our general expenditure budget as well.
Toby?
Am I on mute? No. I don't know if this is too early. It's probably more towards facilities, but Laura or Julie might know, or any of the principals. I'm curious. Is a possible article on a given project in the realm of possibilities on the ballot, or like
that would be up to the facility task force, I would think, at this time, to propose to the full board. I believe my understanding, unless something changes or an issue comes up that the board would like to do that with, that we were not considering that potentially for the next year or two, but that doesn't mean things have not changed.
Right. I'm not saying we should. I just was, we're talking about the budget, and I just was wondering if that's even a possibility. I mean, sometimes those discussions don't happen till 2 weeks before. So I just before the
I can tell you those will be happening. Budget discussion, projects proposed and capital improvements are on the agenda for the next facility task force meeting. As a priority, I know I just requested from the facility directors that they update and continue to review and take the EEI performance contracting comprehensive assessment information into consideration and get that ready for the next facility meeting.
So I'm a little too early. That's fine. I just was curious if we were even thinking that. All right, that's all. Thanks.
I think our next meeting, Toby, is it December 15th, Laura?
Yes. 13th, sorry, 13th. We had to change it to the 13th.
Okay, so that would be a good one to tune into, Toby. I think the committee working with the EEI is going to have to make some decisions whether or not to do anything and anything more than what we've already talked about.
All right, any other budget thoughts?
I will just say, Devin, one more thing, and if anybody else has something to add, please, after, but also I did have some information from the VASBO meeting, not solid information, but another consideration is that, you know, the state level ed fund as well has received a lot of funding that has not been disseminated to schools yet, that they are continuing to decide what they're going to be doing with. Brad James from the AOE Finance Department shared with us that there is a lot, that was exactly with like a lot of money that they are considering, and how they apply that to the ed fund, whether they apply it all in 1 year or spread it over years, would potentially significantly influence the yield. So if they applied it all, there could be as big as a $1,500 swing in the yield, meaning if the yield goes up because they're applying more at the state level, our tax rates would go down significantly. If they try to do that over certain years to avoid a cliff at the end, then it would be less of an impact this year, but that would be spread over certain years. So just another thing to be kind of thinking about, that, you know, we set a budget and we apply our revenues, but there are a lot of pieces that are beyond our control that happen at the state level that influence our tax rates. And the yield is one of them, and how they apply that these funds this year more than ever will be a huge impact to all schools in Vermont.
All right, thanks, Laura. A lot of unknowns still. All right, next item on the agenda is the letter of support for the Swanton Enhancement Grant application. Julie, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, and Terry can jump in as well. I think, let me see if I can share the draft letter. This is basically a letter that they shared with community partners to support their grant application for some work on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. I think that it's really about a parking space for community members to improve access to the rail trail. Obviously, these grants like to have letters of support from community partners, just as we did for Highgate, for airport expansion. You know, so I told Betsy that I would approach the board to see if this was all right with you all.
All right, so I guess to open things up, I'll accept a motion to authorize the superintendent to sign and submit this proposed letter of support for the grant project. Do I have a first? I see Terry. Sorry, I don't see everybody on the screen right now, so it's I'm searching.
Well, why don't I stop the share?
Okay, yeah, that would.
That'll help you.
All right, do I have a second? Dawn's a second. Any discussion on this?
Just thank you to Julie for talking to Betsy about it all and getting it going. Thank you.
For those who haven't seen the particulars of this grant, it mentions parking. Where would that parking actually be? Do we know?
Terry, do you know?
I can't tell you exactly where it is, but you know where I don't know if you've been in Swanton, but where the rail, it's by the superintendent office, actually. It'd be on the other side of the street, and they'd open that up and fix that up so that you'd have a break between the rail trail and the fit and healthy path.
Gotcha.
Is it that area where they cut down the shrubbery and things like that?
I don't know. I haven't seen it lately, but it's the other side. Yeah. Near.
It's closer to your office than where they cut the trees up by the intersection.
Peter has his hand up.
I was just wondering, I know this letters coming from Julie, but we're approving it. Would it give it any more weight if we had the chair sign it as well?
I would ask that it's the vice chair in this case, because I think they need it tomorrow. But I'm happy to.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Good idea, Peter.
Plus, the vice chair used to live in Swanton.
Used to ride my bike all over that area. All right, so we have that motion. I don't think we need to amend it to add a vice chair signature since we authorized that anyway. Without any other discussion, all those in favor, raise your hand.
I say aye.
And those opposed? Terry, I'm assuming you're still an aye.
I'm an aye. Steve was
all
an aye
right.
too.
Yes, all right. Motion carries 8-0. All right. Thanks for putting that together, Julie. All right, on to old business, check warrants. So we have the check warrants from October. Laura, do you have those amounts?
I do. I just wasn't sure if a facility, or I'm sorry, a finance committee member wanted to read those, but I'm happy to. So for the month of October, we have accounts payable at $1,609,184.74. Payroll checks at $73,382.08. Payroll other disbursements, $2,318,869.75. Payroll deductions, $655,676.72 for a grand total. It's a big one this time. We had an extra payroll, $4,657,113.29.
All right, do I have a motion to approve those check warrants as read?
I'll make that motion.
Steve's the first. Do I have a second?
I'll happily second. Oh,
Terry's.
Jen.
Yeah, Jen's the second.
Jen was first.
Jen was quick. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Who says aye?
All right, and those opposed? Motion carries 8-0. All right, and now we're on to financial report.
Okay, so that has also been shared in your shared drive. I will point out that the overall anticipated surplus is about little less than $1 million down from last projection. Primarily that is due to increase in special ed service costs and supply costs, as well as additional student service support contracts and services. We have had a couple of delayed contracts. We are continuing to work with our contracted services to ensure that they get us contracts in a timely manner and invoice us in a timely manner. But obviously our primary focus is on getting those services going, and they are understaffed and overwhelmed at the moment as well. So we're pushing as hard as we can, but some are coming in late and we continue to work on that. But primarily that's where those increases are, and then just additional services as well, as we can find them and shift priorities and what's available and those sorts of things. The other increases in facilities as our directors work hard to utilize some of their normal budget funds that they had allotted on some of the normal maintenance items, supplies, of course. And so we're working on getting those POs in for the entire year with those facility directors, and working on getting those things initiated now rather than waiting towards closer to the year. So that's the biggest shift there. Still in really good shape. Next month, not a big change to revenues this time, but next month I will be updating your extraordinary special ed extraordinary reimbursement projections, which is those high cost students or high cost special ed expenses that we get reimbursed at a much higher level for, 95% over 60,000. And so we have enough information now, I think, to project that. And so I will be filling in that revenue and information by next month.
Any questions for Laura on the financial report? I had one for you, Laura. That carryover is still very large, even though it's lower than last time. It's, you know, at $4.2 million, which I guess is probably just one more complicating factor for next year's budget as we try to figure out the timing and you know, essentially rolling that back into reduced tax rates to some extent. The other opportunity there, you know, maybe to look at some of the facilities projects that are on the table. And I know we got the committee to look at that, but that just a thought, if we have some items that we've been pushing off, that this may be an opportunity to handle some of those.
We did talk about this at the last facility committee meeting. Obviously some of the smaller projects the board could decide to utilize some of the surplus on their own. That would be perfectly normal and appropriate. Some of the larger issues that are on the table, you know, we could potentially, not that this has been decided, but there would be the potential that we could request from the voters to utilize some of those and kind of hold those funds back for a prior year or for the next year to address some of those specific issues, but that would have to go to the voters and be decided by this board as a separate article.
Yeah, and so that we may want to include that in our thought exchange to make sure we're getting community feedback on, you know, what's more important, lowering tax rates in the next year or two versus making some of these investments we know are kind of on the horizon. I don't think we have enough information yet to make those choices, is my own personal opinion.
And just a little reminder for people that are listening that might not be aware, you know, this surplus is from obviously super efficient administration and changes in how we spend, obviously, and being very cautious about that, but also because of the federal funding that we received from COVID. And so we're charging as many expenses as we can to those federal funding sources. And so that has created a good portion of this projected surplus. And we still have a lot of year left.
And we have a facilities committee that likes to spend money.
Yeah, we got to keep Don in check. All right. Thanks, Laura, for that. Old business. The next item is policies for adoption. The first
Gentlemen,
one.
I think Peter had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I keep missing you for some reason.
It's okay. So one thing I think that we need to look at as a board, and not tonight, but I think in a future meeting, it should be on there. We talked last meeting about, I think it was in the facilities meeting, about funding for the track and field program that was never spent from a previous board. And I think this board needs to look at that and see if that's something that we want to do in this, and maybe these funds that or this surplus is someplace where we could to rectify that from the past, or maybe this board isn't interested in that. But I think because it was voted on before and approved, that we should look at that.
Can you repeat that? I didn't quite understand that. I didn't know about that.
Well, Peter, do you want me to jump in?
Sure.
Because I want to semi-answer your question while we get at that. So yes, we had a conversation at the last facility meeting about a motion that the MVU board made to use some unexpended funds to improve the track and field equipment. And for reasons, some of which had to do with storage, that did not happen. And the facility committee would like that to happen. So we have directed Jay and Dan, or rather John and Paul, to look at the costs as well as possible storage options. And likely we would be able to manage that within the current budget. But we would be bringing it probably back to the facility committee and updating the board about that as well. It's not about the funds really, it's about getting a very good cost estimate to make sure what we need, what it would cost, and then, you know, do we need a trailer or something in order to store the materials? I think that becomes the next question there.
All right. Thanks. Anything else on financial report? All right, we'll move on to the policies. So the first policy is public complaints about personnel. This is our second reading.
This policy is, and Terry and I were going back and forth on it today. Terry,
I wanted to say I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry. When you sent me that agenda, I went right to it. I don't know what I did wrong the first time. So Julie took all the feedback that we had given her and put something together. So thank you, Julie.
So the board goals committee spent a good deal of time last Wednesday reviewing the feedback from administrators and the board on these policies, and a couple of changes were made. On public complaints about personnel, Terry suggested adding to the first paragraph language encouraging parents and students to come forward with legitimate complaints. And then the board really discussed, you know, when a complaint comes to the full board, that the full board really wants to weigh in on it. And Chris really was hoping that there would be some good language in this policy around not at the procedural level, but just at least, you know, steps. And so the suggestion at that meeting was under appeal to the board, such a request should be made formally and in writing. And that request will be reviewed by the school board at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. So that there would be likely an executive session because it's addressing personnel, and the board would discuss whether to move forward with an appeal or whether to have it handled by the board chair in writing or in some other manner. And then that the person making the complaint would hear from the board chair immediately following that. I think, oh, no, there was one more. We also added in language in the case where a complainant brings a concern to the attention of the board without requesting a hearing. As you know, sometimes people just complain about general things. They're not complaining about personnel, and they're not complaining about, and they're not wanting to come before the board. They just want to apprise you of it. That the board chair would respond for the board, and I'm sure that they'd be reaching out to board members involved. So those are the changes that we made based on that discussion and the feedback we got.
So on that policy, basically, what we're really encouraging people is to be involved in helping solve a situation that may be of concern to them, right? I mean, the whole idea is that they know where to go, and if they aren't, and it's not resolved, it moves it along. I think it's kind of a user-friendly type of policy. It isn't like you're really ticked off and you're going to get us and we're going to try to stonewall you. It's like you're informed there's a process, and you know, it's available, and in the end you will get a final answer. Okay, thank you.
All right, do I have a motion at this time to adopt this policy? Terry's the first. Do I have a second? Jen's a second. Any discussion, Toby?
I just was curious. We don't know. Chris hasn't seen this, right? And Chris was really asking, and in a very good way, he was saying, "I'm not just worried about me as chair, but any chair in the future." And I think it's a valid point. So we did he get a chance to review these latest edits? Do you know anyone, Julie, Terry?
Yeah, I sent them to him that next morning.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I just think this is a tough one. They're all tough, but I think it's very good that as a board, we're really trying to get up to speed on our policies, because they're very important, I think, when issues arise. for not only for us, but also for everybody, every resident of the district, so they know. It will guide us. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Peter?
Do we have a program, or can we put a program in place that makes us review it? And we may have to, because as the more policy or the more of these that we have, it'll be harder, but we should be reviewing these, I think, every other year, at least every 2 years. We should be looking at a policy and reviewing it. Does it still make sense? Is it doing what we want? And maybe it does, and we just say it's good and we move on. But I think we shouldn't let these policies get out there and get stagnant and not be what we want anymore.
No, I agree. That's part of what the committee's really talked about is, you know, some policies have to be, well, one in particular has to be reviewed annually. And then having a rotation, looking at any new policy updates that have come through the Vermont School Board Association, but which is how we started earlier in the fall. And then have a rotation, as you said. So that's part of the work.
Julie, can you refresh my memory? Was a policy on policies part of our first deck of policies we did way back when we did requirements, or is that one that we need to take up at some point?
Well, that's one that exists, but it was not one that your survey turned up as a high priority.
Okay, so that's probably, Peter, where we need to start, because that's what would govern how we rotate through the review of the other policies.
Do we need to review our policy on policies?
I think that's probably a good first step here. All right. Any other discussion on this policy? Seeing none. All right. All those in favor of adopting this policy as presented tonight, raise your hand.
Steve says aye.
And any opposed? All right. The motion carries 8-0. And the second policy up for potential adoption tonight is the community use of school facilities.
So similarly, we had a robust conversation at 9 o'clock at night on a Wednesday about this policy, but it was important. And the language, we wanted to make sure that the language that Franklin has in an agreement that happens before the merger would fall under the umbrella of this. And I was glad to see that it did, because we worked really hard at the time with the back and forth to make sure that it would fall under this model policy. And so I think it certainly does. Some of the specifics will be in a fee schedule procedure. And the discussion, and that is still in draft form. I mean, some schools have you just meet with the kitchen staff and they go through a protocol if they're using the kitchen. Other schools require you to hire somebody from the food service company, you know, so we're making sure that we get all of the little specifics in there. But the consensus of the committee was that they did not want to charge a fee for the use of the building for any civic group, any educational purposes, or any local nonprofits, which I believe would include the local Boy and Girl Scouts, even though that's a national organization. But if it was a for-profit entity or a not local organization, there would be some reasonable charges for custodial services or technology or things like that. And we are going to review those draft fees for that as well. We wanted to make sure that it stated right in here. I think Steve is the one who gave us the feedback to make sure that it states that the facility use application procedure should be used. And people would need to apply. Principals, usually you directly contact a building principal and there's a form. And then we also added in there that following public health requirements would also be a requirement for anyone using our facilities.
All right, do I have a motion to adopt this policy as written?
Steve will make that motion.
Steve's the first, Terry's the second. Any further discussion on this one? Peter?
Is there any language in there about first come, first serve? I'm just thinking about the town meeting. I'd hate to see something else get asked for the use of the building and the town wanted it for some reason, or you know what I'm getting at.
Yep.
is I'd hate to see just because they didn't get their, if they use, especially if they use it every year, and how is that that's probably done more in the procedure than the policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that language in the procedure that prioritizes municipal use, I mean, Franklin already has that in your agreement, which we don't have it posted now, but we will post it with this procedure so that it's part of the procedure for the district, since you have a separate agreement in place. But yeah, we can put language in that procedure around prioritizing. I mean, obviously, the big things like town meeting, we know about. So nobody's going to, have a big jamboree or something in the auditorium. But if it was a different kind of event that we didn't know about, usually that's worked through with the principal at the building level. And we'd want to prioritize our community, it goes without saying that we want to prioritize our community and municipalities for use of our buildings.
Julie, that angle could also be put in the application process too, part of the procedure, rather than be on the policy side, that somewhere in the application stating should it be available.
Yeah. Great question.
On the fees, I know Devin brought this up the other night, like pickup basketball games for local people like that. Are they going to be charged, or is that going to depend on the administration or who's in charge, or how does that work?
Now, the feedback from the committee was that we didn't want to charge local nonprofits or community. Because it kind of goes against the purpose of our buildings. We would really be charging a for-profit company, which we don't get a ton of, but sometimes MVU is a larger building, could get that. And sometimes we do have that for private businesses that just want to use our gym to run their private for-profit business. So we would charge for that. And we have yet to have the administrators look specifically at the costs. That was a draft that we adopted from another school district, and maybe they're asking, they also have some bigger facilities that they're charging for. So we'll be looking at that. But no, there's no expectation that nonprofit, community-based organizations would be charged for anything. I suppose, Peter, if there was some extraordinary thing, like you needed 5 custodians there or something, that could be talked through. But it's not the intention of the committee or I think the administration to do that. It's not something we do often at all.
When we think about this, we're thinking, at least I am, I guess, mostly about the buildings, but this policy would also include the athletic fields. in that as well.
Yeah, and student use always comes first. So if we have games happening at MVU, we're not giving our fields away. Same with basketball, things like that. If we've got 5th and 6th graders playing basketball, we're not giving the space away to others. And this is not new stuff. I mean, this policy existed previously in local districts, and people have been negotiating these things now. So we just want to make sure that it's important to have a policy for this, but we want to make sure that the procedures make sense for each individual school.
All right, any other discussion on this? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor of adopting the community use of school facilities policy as written, raise your hand.
Steve says aye.
Aye. Terry and Steve both say aye.
And any opposed? All right, the motion carries 8-0. Thanks everybody on those. And sorry, I've just accidentally closed my agenda. All right, we're on to other business. Facility committee. Any updates from that group?
I think Peter kind of mentioned earlier about our meeting, and one of the things we certainly are looking at, and Laura also provided information, is about the fields. My favorite project that I've been on now for 9 or 10 years is upgrading the locker rooms for the boys and girls locker rooms, men's and women's at MVU. That's a much bigger project than we're going to take on probably next year in the local budget, but I'll keep beating on it. And we are getting some traction with EEI to really look at that. If you haven't been in the locker rooms lately, I think the administration does as well as they can with what they have, but they don't have much. So it's a struggle, but I think we're having some really good discussions with EEI on where we want to go, what our priorities are. And Julie's been seeking information on a couple of issues. I think early childhood consolidation. So we're getting close to having to make some decisions if we're going to have anything that to address in this year's upcoming budget.
All right, thanks, Don. All right, next item is a board goals committee update. Any volunteers on that one? Terry just appeared.
Yeah, thank you for asking for volunteers. Maybe somebody else would like to. We had a really great meeting. So whoever would like to share, I'd love to give up the floor.
I've been talking all night. Joanne, can I call on you? You can say no.
Well, I mean, we had a great meeting with Kosha. Yes, we reviewed these policies afterwards for the energy that we had left. But it's hard. I can't compete with, the way Kosha does her presentation. So she brought us a lot of great information. Maybe, and I don't mean to put this back on Julie, but will Kosha be able to present to the board next month and in the next couple, in one of the next couple meetings, so she can do maybe a smaller version of what she presented to us as far as the results from the testing?
Well, the testing results are preliminary. I think that when we do a report to the full board, again, this is on how schools are moving forward with recovery and toward the board goal. But what the data she shared was the fall start of school baseline data. What we really want to share is when we have some winter data to see what kind of progress. But yes, I know she definitely will want to share particularly some of the data around what's happening in our schools. We've talked a lot about attendance of students, attendance of staff, how many student, how much time kids are having in front of teachers. These are things we've all been talking about. We hear about study halls. We're trying to put a plan in place to eliminate some of that, or at least reduce it. There's the behavioral referrals that are happening. There's a lot going on, and a lot of also at the same time, really reflective work that the data teams have done to look at where kids are right now and what they need to do to put in place in each school and as a district. So we will definitely be coming to the board with that information, particularly when we're looking at how effective some of these interventions were.
My observation was for the whole board, if you had any concern or question or doubt, which is probably actually part of being a good school board member, if you had any doubt that our administration is not identifying our weaknesses and where they can improve, you shouldn't have any doubt, because after that meeting, I was convinced that they're on it. The principals, Julie, Kosha, and all those others that are involved with helping Kosha put together what she showed us. Our administration, as far as I'm concerned, knows where we're weak geographically and instructional wise, and they know they got to address it, and they're working on how to address it is ongoing. But as a board member, I was put at ease. We're not just aimlessly trying to hit a dartboard. Our administrators know where they're doing poorly and what we need to do to try to get better. So from a board level, that's what I took out of the great presentation.
Thank you.
Can I add something? Thank
Yeah,
you
go
all.
ahead, Terry.
That I think that was really well said. This is what happens when you turn it over, right, to other people that are going to tell you, because you all did a great job of describing it and what we really took away from it. And what I also noticed, to follow up with what Toby said, is it's all part of a long process. And it's not just about COVID, it's about overall starting a long time ago. And it's about having high expectations of all kids, and that all kids are capable, so that all kids can do or be everything they're capable of. And I came away with that too, and feeling really optimistic about it. Yeah, and some of us might say, well, it's not fast enough. It's a long process, and I think this ship is definitely, picking up momentum as it goes. So thank you for that. It was really great. And as Joanne said, we were exhausted after that, hearing all that, and yet we powered through thanks to Julie on those processes. And we had company, so we really appreciate people coming to join us in the meeting too. So thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for that update. The last update on here is for negotiations.
So we have a first negotiation session is set for November 30th at 7 o'clock at MVU. We are working through ground rules. We've agreed to most things, but I think the parties still have some things to iron out. But they've been very productive. We've had 2 meetings of the negotiations committee to talk through proposals, and I've had plenty of communication with the association on that too.
All right, thanks, Julie, and thanks, negotiations committee. I know that's a huge time commitment. So I don't believe we have any reason for executive session tonight. Peter?
Devin, do you think that we should go into executive session? We did hear a grievance tonight. I don't know if that warrants going into executive session tonight or not, but I just thought I should throw that out there.
So we intentionally made the decision to wait until our next meeting when Chris could join us for that conversation.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right, and so future agenda items, we'll have an SRO update. An athletic director report. We'll continue to work on the budget. We have early college and proficiency, which I believe will address the public comment that we did receive tonight. And truancy is on our list for future agenda items. Anything from the board that you'd like to add to our list of future agenda items, Terry?
If I could just add, maybe not for the board, but it's kind of interesting. We were talking about involving in the community. I do know that the Swan Enhancement Project that would really love if Julie would show up and talk one of these days, as well as Kosha, to talk about some of this stuff. And it also has to do with some of that, explaining how the grades, the pass fail, the meet expectations, all of that in the elementary schools. So I think that there is a real desire for that out there. I'll have to get with you, Julie, to talk to you about that and when it would work for you. So
Sure.
thank you.
And now future meeting dates. So possible change. Right now, the board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 2nd at 6:30.
Yeah, we're working through availability of the space in Swanton, and also December is one of those weird months where the first Tuesday and the third Thursday are back to back. So moving them both to Thursdays breaks it up a little bit, and that will allow some of the committees to meet as well. So hopefully that will work for the board.
So are you proposing new dates to us?
Yeah. December 2nd would be a change. That's a Thursday.
Okay, so you're saying we would meet on the 2nd and then again on the 16th.
Correct.
Which would not be a change.
Right.
Okay. So do we need a motion on that? Or is talking about it here? What's the process? I guess I'm unsure.
We don't need to have a motion to have a special board meeting or cancel one of the regular meetings. So.
Okay, so we are looking for Thursday, December 2nd as our next board meeting to be held in the same format.
Devin,
Toby?
Julie, I actually think
like
it might not be a bad idea to do it, because then it's in the minutes, and these are
Yeah.
regularly scheduled meetings, which I think, didn't we announce those at the beginning of the year, like through the whole year? Didn't we?
Yes, you do that. So, I mean, you can, obviously, we cancel that and we make that
Yeah.
in the minutes, but
I just think
doing
it
a
might be good
motion
to make
makes
a
it
motion.
easier.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it might be.
Let's do
So
that.
I'll make a motion for our next regularly scheduled meeting to be held on Thursday, December 2nd, which is a change from
The
Julie,
7th. The 7th.
from the 7th, right?
All right, do I have a second on that? Joanne's a second. All right, those in favor, or sorry, any discussion? All right, those in favor, raise your hand. Steve, do I have? All right, and any opposed? Motion carries 8-0.
Devin, I may have missed that, but with a change in dates, I think John Lumsden is scheduled to come. Is that right, Julie?
Yeah, he's expecting to come on the 2nd.
So he'll be moved. Yeah, okay. So he will be there on the 2nd. Great.
Yes.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Terry's the first, Toby's the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 8-0. We are adjourned at 9:09.
Can't.